All right. Newsletter 24. Why was Sam Altman fired? Question mark. Did Q star and early signs of artificial general intelligence contribute? So this is November 27th. I wrote this, so it's going to feel kind of funny at times because probably some stuff in here that has been or that's evolved since. But here we go. When Sam Altman was fired by OpenAI on November 17th, it felt like one of those events where you might not forget where you were when you first heard about it. I know where I was. I was sitting with my wife, Julia LaRoche, in our living room. She saw it on X/Twitter first. And this is a little exchange between Julia and I. Julia says, Sam Altman just got fired from OpenAI, question mark, exclamation point, etc. Me, yeah, right. Julia, no, I'm serious. Me, impossible. Wait, really? Why would they fire him? That's insane. ... Right? So there's a little exchange because obviously you remember where you were when that happened because it did seem bananas at the time. So here we go. While the question remains unanswered, I think it still does actually. Other than a vague comment from the board of OpenAI, a lot has happened in the last 10 days. Again, I remind you, this is end of November. Quote unquote, here's a quote from OpenAI at the time. Mr. Altman's departure follows a deliberative review process by the board, which concluded that he was not consistently candid in his communications with the board, hindering its ability to exercise its responsibilities. The board no longer has confidence in his ability to continue leading OpenAI. Now, that was a quote from the excerpt from the press release / announcement. So a clear explanation beyond the above wasn't published, and Greg Brockman, co-founder and president, quit soon after he learned of the board's decision to fire Sam. The next day, OpenAI COO explained to employees the firing of Sam, quote unquote, took the management team by surprise, and that management had multiple conversations with the board to try to better understand the reasons and process behind their decisions. We can definitively say that the board's decision was not made in response to malfeasance or anything related to our financial, business, safety, or security / privacy practices. This was a breakdown in communication between Sam and the board. We still share your concerns about how the process has been handled, are working to resolve the situation, and will provide updates as we're able, end quote. So this came from an article in Axios, which was really strong, and I linked to back on November 18th. So OpenAI's board initially refused to bring Sam back, but after, quote unquote, OpenAI was in open revolt on Monday with more than 730 employees signing an open letter threatening to leave unless the board resigns and reinstates Sam Altman as CEO, along with co-founder and former president Greg Brockman, end quote. This is from a Wired article on November 20th. Screenshots, little article, kind of pictures, etc., just for little visual stuff in the newsletter. So then on November 20th, Ilya, the co-founder and chief scientist, reversed course on initially voting in favor of firing Sam. And so I took a screenshot of his tweet on November 20th where he says, I deeply regret my participation in the board's actions. I never intended to harm OpenAI. I love everything we've built together, and I will do everything I can to reunite the company. Culminating with a November 22nd announcement that Sam and OpenAI reached an agreement for him to return as CEO along with an initial new board. There's a picture of that on Twitter. The thing that hasn't changed over the last 10 days is that we still don't really know why Sam Altman was fired. Recent reports have surfaced around the role OpenAI's Q-star model and associated artificial general intelligence breakthroughs could have played in Sam's firing. While it's still just speculation at this point, the idea that signs of AGI were surfacing ahead of Sam's firing, which exacerbated the tension between OpenAI's overarching nonprofit mission and its capped for-profit subsidiary, seemed like a reasonable explanation of how these events might have developed. There's an article that I linked to here from, I believe it was The Information, that covered this in pretty solid and great detail. Continuing my conversation here within the newsletter, whereas LLMs to date effectively have intuition associated with the massive knowledge bases they're trained on, aka, quote unquote, a zip file of a chunk of the internet, end quote, the Q-star model might have shown signs of the ability to think, logically reason, and develop new ideas, aka the beginning of turning the corner from systems 1 thinking to systems 2 thinking, parentheses, more on that below. Screenshot of a Reuters article titled OpenAI researchers warned board of AI breakthrough ahead of CEO ouster, sources say. And so here's some quotes from that. Some at OpenAI believe Q star could be a breakthrough in the startup search for what's known as artificial general intelligence, one of the people told Reuters. OpenAI defines AGI as autonomous systems that surpass humans in most economically valuable tasks, end quote. Oh, actually, we're going to continue. Given vast computing resources, the new model was able to solve certain mathematical problems, the person said, on condition of anonymity, because the individual was not authorized to speak on behalf of the company. Though only performing math on the level of grade school students, acing such tests made researchers very optimistic about Q star's future success, the source said. Researchers consider math to be a frontier of generative AI development. Currently, generative AI is good at writing and language translation by statistically predicting the next word, and answers to the same question can also vary widely. But conquering the ability to do math, where there's only one right answer, implies AI would have greater reasoning capabilities resembling human intelligence. This could be applied to novel scientific research, for instance, AI researchers believe. Unlike a calculator that can solve a limited number of operations, AGI can generalize, learn, and comprehend. End quote. Great article from Reuters. They've actually did some really awesome scoops and coverage of that whole development and continue to do so as well. So now back to my newsletter. This explanation of Sam's firing seems feasible given the challenges OpenAI has had to navigate to maintain alignment with its nonprofit mission while pursuing commercialization of its products via its new capped for profit arm. I have a link to OpenAI's kind of description of their structure there, which is to fuel massive investments in product development. Taking a step back, it might be safe to say that AGI isn't an if, but a when and how, which is where Andrej Karpathy's recent video, The Busy Person's Intro to LLMs, comes into play. Phenomenal video. Please check that out. Also, big shout out to my colleague Hugo, who helped bring Andrej's video to my attention and hear more thoughts, and looking forward to hearing more thoughts about his perspective on LL-enabled sports operating systems and what those could look like in the very near future, thanks to all of these developments. So, screenshot of a LinkedIn micro essay I had posted in regards to the killer video from Karpathy, which I strongly recommend anybody check out. So here we go. Whereas we understand operating systems today to be Microsoft Windows or Mac OS, Andrej brings to life how they might evolve, the role of AI, and what the large language model enabled operating system 2.0 of the future is going to be, and it's absolutely fascinating. While I hope anyone that reads this newsletter might give the video a shot from beginning to end, go ahead and jump to 42 minutes in and 16 seconds, where, quote unquote, he ties everything together into a single diagram via the large language model operating system. If/when that captures your attention, go back to the beginning and watch the whole thing. You won't regret it. I guarantee it. Really, really great video. By way of background, we use the operating systems on our phones, laptops, etc. today as the foundation for device functionality, as they provide a stable platform for a wide range of software applications we use daily, including communication, productivity, games, and utilities. Now, when you start thinking about an LLM-enabled operating system, one that embeds intuitive thinking along with reasoning into the OS so that it gets to know you, the way you work and live, as well as how to take care of increasingly complex tasks on your behalf, you can see why there is so much excitement around developments such as the Q-Star project. The interface becomes exponentially more intuitive due to the natural language interface while excelling at understanding and contextualizing increasingly complex user requests, similar to the way a rock star chief of staff operates. Continuously learning, improving its performance based on user interactions, feedback, behavioral data, and done so with a photographic memory. And yes, now might be a good idea to watch Her, starring my man Joaquin Phoenix, one of my favorite actors of all time, obviously. If you haven't already seen it, tremendous movie. And there's a nice little visual of some other roles he's played, including the Joker, which, wow. Okay, so back to the newsletter. Given the context above, the last 9 days of OpenAI developments and all of the conversations developing around AGI's potential arrival, there are two ideas central to the video that I wanted to highlight. One, System 1 versus System 2 thinking. Today's large language models are effectively gestalts of a zip file of a big chunk of the internet. right? They draw all sorts of connections between the content they analyze, which effectively enables them to provide quick answers to questions by making statistical predictions about what the right answer is to your question based on the content they've analyzed, which at times can also lead to hallucinations as they effectively make the wrong connections, which, it happens. Similar to the way we use intuition to answer questions, especially about subjects we have a deep level of expertise and experience with. This is consistent with System 1 thinking, right? The more you have 10, 20 years of experience, 10,000 plus hours in a specific subject, the faster you can just intuitively answer someone's question without even, you ask anything about X and boom, you have an answer, right? That's that intuition. That's that System 1 thinking. Whereas System 2 thinking is when systems can think, reason, and come up with new ideas. This is the type of thinking where more time typically increases the quality and quantity. I wrote that twice. The quantity and quality of the results, whereas more time does not impact the results of System 1 thinking. This is where we step into AGI, as more time does translate to better answers, just as it would if you gave a human being more time to solve an increasingly difficult question. Killer graphics from the video, which again, I really hope that you will check it out, and we'll continue down. A simple but powerful example of System 1 versus System 2 thinking was brought to life in the video at 12 minutes and 30 seconds, where he described something called the reversal curse. I think this was great because it brings it to life in a super basic and tangible way. So he explained that if you ask an LLM, in this case GPT-4, who is Tom Cruise's mom? And it correctly answers Mary Lee Pfeiffer. You would assume the model would then know the answer to the question, who is Mary Lee Pfeiffer's son? But instead of saying Tom Cruise, it goes, I don't know, right? Which is kind of interesting if you think about the System 1 versus System 2 stuff. And so there's a graphic, or I should say a screenshot and a visual of this, which really resonates, which I dropped into the newsletter. So System 1 thinking isn't capable of connecting the dots, where System 2 thinking, is in the future would absolutely be able to. So the second thing to consider, I think, are LLMs are not chatbots. They are the kernel process of an emerging operating system. Chatbots allow you to interface in a chat-based format with the model. It's not necessarily a chat bot, right? It's just the way that we, collectively are understanding the interface, if you will. So here's a quote. We can borrow a lot of analogies from the previous computing stack to try and think about this new computing stack fundamentally based around LLMs, orchestrating tools for problem solving and accessible via natural language interface of language, like what I'm using right now to communicate with you. And I took a picture of his LLM OS, which brings it all together. So the emergence of AGI and the way operating systems of the future could evolve accordingly is obviously something else, and you can tell by the way I'm talking about it, I'm quite excited about it. And that is that. That is the end of this week's newsletter. I don't think it was as good, especially the way I read it, as the previous one, but I hope you all enjoy this, and hopefully for those that have not yet read the newsletter, that this might be somewhat interesting. Please feel free to go ahead and go back and check out the newsletter itself, including some typos I caught as I was reading it, which I will go ahead and fix. So anyhow, have a great day, and thanks for listening.